Okay. Very good. Welcome. Welcome. So nice to hear the buzz this early Saturday morning. We're here to gather and celebrate the end of our fiscal year and the beginning of a new one. So I'd like to introduce myself first. I'm Virginia Souza, the president of the League of Women Voters of North Santa Barbara County. Yay! Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce the woman who presides over this wonderful facility, St. Peter's Episcopal Church. It's Reverend Courtney Tan.
Good morning. As Virginia said, I am the Reverend Courtney Tan. I am the interim priest in charge at St. Peter's. I am honoured to welcome you here for the annual meeting of the League of Women Voters. I am especially honoured to begin with the invocation for an organisation which has been working to champion voting rights for over 104 years. In their current iteration and for over 50 years prior to that as part of the suffragist movement. Informed and educated voting is a linchpin of our democracy and the most important tool we have to address issues of social injustice and marginalisation. Whatever our faith or creed, whatever our social or cultural background, we are gathered here because of our passion for this work. So let us begin. From the power of our memory and history, with high hopes for the days that lie ahead, we gather to craft the destiny we share with one another. We gather with faith in the practice of democracy. We gather with hearts and minds open to the wisdom of every voice among us. In our gathering, may we dream and design a bold future. May we bring our best selves to this service, and may we dream these dreams and do this work with love. Amen.
And now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce a Northern Chumash, not an elder, but too young to be an elder, but a Northern Chumash tribe member to offer our land acknowledgement, Mr. Earnest Houston.
Thank you. My name is Earnest Houston. I was born in Santa Maria. I have been a lifetime parishioner here at St. Peter's Episcopal Church, and I am a Chumash descendant. So, I guess what I'll say briefly here is that while I have lived here, and my family has always lived here, unfortunately, because of what happened in this area, my grandfather's generation was really the last generation that was actually saw and heard all of the language, the dance and the music, and the ceremony. So I'm in the process of learning from my cousin music and ceremony. So as we begin, as native ceremony goes, they usually begin with a procession with singing, and so there would be a procession with singing. We would burn grandfather sage for purification and for purification, and then we would move to prayer, and then more song, and then there would be opening acclamation, and your ceremony would begin. And so I brought my rattle. I only use this with my cousin, but so I brought this as a token to dance and song, and I brought my sage as a token to burning sage for purification. We are, in fact, in the heart of Chumash territory. You'll notice that There is the mission in Presidio in Santa Barbara. There is the mission in Santa Ynez and the mission in Lompoc. The reason the three missions are so close together is there were so many Chumash Indians. Vandenberg Air Force Base is home to some of the most dense archaeological deposits in the nation because there were so many Chumash Indians. And then as we move just farther north, just a bit, we come up to Arroyo Grande and then up into San Luis Obispo. Again, just the density, because this area offered so much. We had rivers, we had open grasslands. It's where the ocean meets, where the ocean and the rivers meet at the shoreline. And so Chumash people lived here for 11,000 years at least. And they lived here in abundance with a highly developed cultural society. And unfortunately, in cultural clash, much of this was lost. So in the case of my own family, I remember in the late 1960s and early 1970s when the American Indian movement was boiling up, and it caused a lot of disturbance in my own family. There were elder people who did not want it raised up because they had lived through the difficulties of the late 1800s and the early 1900s when Indians were definitely unwelcome people in their own land. And so in my own family, my grandfather's grandfather was baptized at the mission at San Luis Obispo in 1841. And that's when our family got their Spanish name. So when my grandfather was baptized, my grandfather's grandfather was baptized, he became Pacifico Gallego. And that's who he was. And so as we follow our family down, the latest 1800 and the earliest 1900s were a terrible, terrible, terrible time for American Indians. And my family lived back in Lopez Canyon, east of Arroyo Grande, because enclaves of Chumash people would live in remote, out-of-the-way places where it would minimize their contact with colonial white people. And their other alternative was to live on ranches and do ranch and farm work. And my family did all of that, just like all of the others. And one of the problems is that oftentimes children could be taken from native families and brought to white families so they could be brought up in a good Christian environment. And what this did over those years is it kept Chumash men from finding Chumash women and Chumash women from finding Chumash men. And so, as just like with my family, a lot of Chumash women married white men. A lot of Chumash men went to jail. A lot of Chumash men were killed. And it's very sad. It's very tragic. But we're desperately trying to hang on. There are many descendants. Many descendants don't even know they're descendants. Oftentimes they think they're Mexican descendants or California descendants. But they're actually Chumash. So we are working hard to try to maintain our visibility. I currently work as a cultural resource monitor. So I monitor construction projects, and I just finished an emergency project last week in an excavation in Santa Barbara. You can dig in town, underneath buildings and through sidewalks and streets. We found house floors, village sites, we found burials. Chumash people have been here for millennia. We are still here, and this is still our Chumash land. And so I'll leave that there. That's what I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you for that history. Wow. Appreciate that. All right. I'd like to introduce our honored guests at this time. And you're going to meet them just in a moment. So you're going to meet our California League of Women Voters president, Chris Carson, who's with us today. And so she's sitting in the back, so you're going to meet her. And you're also going to meet Rosa Coronado, our honoree for today. She's sitting here in the front. And then we have Carson Link. He's here to represent California Senator Monique Limon with a certificate for Rosa Coronado. He also will represent Assemblyperson Greg Hart. And I think this may be State Senate Congressman Salud Carvajal's representative, Ms. Echevarria, right? Echevarria. Very welcome. Welcome. And I'd like to also introduce our interpreter. Do we have anyone else that would like to have headsets for interpretation? Jose Farias and Joseph Farias are interpreters for today. Our videographer is Stephen Paschke. So this meeting will be recorded and on the League website very soon. Well, now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, and that is a woman that we are fortunate to know here in Santa Maria. She's been the president of the United States League of Women Voters back in 2016 through 2020. She's been in the league since 1983, along with her husband, Tom Carson, who will be here anytime now, and he's our coach, our league coach. So we're just so fortunate here in Santa Maria, or in the Central Coast. And I should, by the way, I should introduce the two co-presidents from the SLO League, and that's Anna Havlick and Elizabeth Mannock. Thank you for being with us. Okay, and Chris Carson is now the California State President of the League of Women Voters, and she has some words of wisdom for us. Chris lives in Los Angeles, born and raised in Los Angeles, and has come up just to deliver this talk on saving democracy and why California is so important.
It's always great to be up here, and we had a wonderful dinner at Shaw's last night. That's an enormous amount of food. I don't know how people eat it. The title was supposedly How California is going to Save Democracy. Well, no one person or group of people are going to save our democracy. We all have to pitch in and save our democracy. But we are a model. This state is today a model for voting rights in this country, and that's pretty important for saving democracy. But in order to find out how we got here, I want you to come back in time with me almost 60 years to August 6, 1965, when President Lyndon Baines Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act. Congress later amended the Act 5 times, but I would like to read to you two estimates of just how important it was. It was designed to enforce voting rights protected by the 14th and 15th Amendments to the U.S. Constitution, and to secure the right to vote for racial minorities throughout the country, especially in the South. According to the U.S. Department of Justice, the act is considered to be the most effective piece of federal civil rights legislation ever enacted in the country. And the National Archives says the Voting Rights of 1965 was the most significant statutory change in the relationship between the federal and state governments in the area of voting since Reconstruction. So I want to take a look just briefly, because you know this material. Two really the things that most people know about the Civil Rights Act are two sections, Section 2 and Section 5. Section 2, reduced to its essentials, says that certain minority language groups must have language, ballot information and language in their primary language, and that for purposes of redistricting, you can't do racial gerrymandering. Grossly overstating, but that's where we are. Section 5 was designed to deal with jurisdictions that engaged in egregious voting discrimination. Stuff like poll taxes, literacy tests, moving polling places at the last minute without notification, erratic voting registration practices, you name it. So what states would you guess might have been covered by Section 5? Any state particular? Who do you think? What does that sound like to you? What states does that sound like to you? Okay. California. In 1965, California had 5 counties that were covered by Section 5. Monterey and North, all along the Central Valley. For instance, in Monterey, they were routinely administering literacy tests in order to register to vote. And of course, it wasn't just everybody who wanted to register to vote. It was only certain sorts of people that wanted to register to vote. Polling places were, like 24 hours before, oh, this isn't going to work, we're moving the polling place, but nobody was told, so, and it was only some that were moved. And so that was the way it was, and that was why they were designated to be Section 5 counties. But it wasn't just the 5 counties who were behaving badly. I'm going to give you just a couple of examples. For instance, in Orange County, the Sheriff's Department used to run security patrols on Election Day in the heavily Latino districts of Anaheim for security reasons, but not in, say, Laguna or Newport or gated communities like Emerald Bay. And that was, it wasn't just Orange County where that kind of thing happened. And then if it was just a matter of, how is my ballot counted? Do I know my ballot is counted? Los Angeles County used to have, long ago, very large ballot. They called them bed sheets because they looked like bed sheets. And I never voted on one, but, I heard that you had to figure it out and everything. And then they would be all taken to the registrar recorder's headquarters in boxes and counted, hand counted. All those ballots from all the voters in Los Angeles County. And it would be very late at night, and people would be tired, and honestly, they would have been fortifying themselves with, beverages of various kinds. And at 4 a.m, they'd look over and see a box and say, oh, did we count that? And somebody would go over and say, yeah, we counted it. I don't know. No one knows how many ballots were counted or not counted for no other reason that people were just exhausted and muddled and they just couldn't handle it anymore. So how do we get from there to here? So I'd like to, because we got a lot of league people here who know how the section works. Let's walk through a voter experience here in California. So in 1965, who was eligible to vote? How old did you have to be? 21. The deadline was like 30 days before an election. Anything else that might disqualify? You had to be an American citizen, obviously. 21 years old. Is there anything else that might stop you from being able to vote? No, not in California. Conviction of a crime. If you were convicted of a crime, you lost your right to vote permanently. Today, it's U.S. citizen, 18 years of age. They like you to, most cutoff is 15 days before an election. Although, if there's a vote center in your county, you can register on election day at the vote center and vote provisionally. And what about if you've been convicted of a crime? No, okay. If you are serving a sentence in county jail not for a felony offense, you can vote. And they vote. If you have been convicted of a crime, have a sentence in state prison, and have left that and are back in the community, you can vote. Even if you're on parole, you can vote. Now, the only group of people who can't vote are the people who are currently incarcerated in state prison, and the league and our partners are working on that. So that's been a big jump. Okay. I might. So you're registered. Do you know in ahead of time in 1965, if you get your ballot ahead of time, do you know what's on that ballot? You did get a sample ballot. And you started to get that massive voter information guide from the state. Whole forests are killed with that thing. And we continue today, we get sample ballots ahead of time, we get the voter information guide. You can elect to get your sample ballot on PDF, at least in some counties. You walk into however you vote, you know before you vote what's on your ballot. That's not true in a lot of states. They don't tell you ahead of time. The League in Texas and New York and a whole lot of places does a very brisk business in telling people ahead of time, this is what's going to be on your ballot. And when you think about it, that's a kind of scary thing if you walk in on election day and this is the first time you know what's on your ballot. So you've registered. You know what's on your ballot. In 1965, when, where, and how did you vote? On election day. In person, at a local polling place on election day. Now, you could get an absentee ballot if you requested it because you were going to be out of the county. And that's still the case in a lot of states. In California, they moved from, I'm going to be out of the county, I need an absentee ballot, to what they call a no excuse. I would like an absentee ballot, please. Lots of people did that because they had long commutes every day, back and forth from work, and they didn't, get there at 7 in the morning, so. Then there were a whole lot of requests, and they moved to permanent absentee. You just say, I want an absentee ballot, and you got one from then on. I guess it was 2001, after the Bush-Gore thing, when they were pass the Help America Vote Act, and they were talking about reforms, and one of the things suggested was, no excuse absentee ballot. You just permanent absentee. And the then president of the state league here in California was at a national meeting, and the Massachusetts said, well, that's just ridiculous. You can't do that. It couldn't be enforced. And she said, well, I'm sorry, but California's been doing that for years. And she said, what couldn't? She said, well, you don't have to believe me, but anybody who wants to get on the permanent absentee ballot can do it. And we've got a lot more voters in California than you do in Massachusetts. So it works. So we're going to advocate for that. Then, of course, as time moved on, we moved to the Voters' Choice Act, which the League was one of the big proponents, gradually implementing that. Certain counties, like Los Angeles, were one of the first, and everybody got a ballot in the mail, and you could vote that ballot, throw it in the mail, put it in a secure drop box, or go to voting stations, centers, anywhere in the county. And they give you your ballot, you vote. And if you weren't sure if you'd registered or not, you could register there, and they'd vote you provisional. And in LA County now, you can put and they start with X number 2 weeks in advance, and then they keep rolling out more and more the closer they get to election day. You can put in your location, and they will, on the web, and they'll tell you all the voting stations near you and what the wait time is. So you can just, whatever is most convenient for you. It's fascinating. So when COVID hit, and they sent out ballots to everybody, and everybody voted with their ballot, either in the mail or whatever. and with the chaos that around the country. How are we going to handle this? We've got to do all mail ballots, and we can't, and all kinds of things. And it was insane what the League saw across the country. And to the last minute, the state of Connecticut was insisting, in order to get an absentee ballot in Connecticut, you just don't file something and mail it in and then get your ballot. You have to have a separate person act as a witness that you really do have to get an absentee ballot. Now, try to do that in the middle of a pandemic. So they were fighting to get that dropped. And the Connecticut state president told me that the bureaucracy fought like cornered rats to try and stop just give them an absentee ballot. Finally did. But ask yourself, how would you do that? Didn't matter, didn't like it, there it was. So then now here we are today, and we vote however we choose to vote. And the ballots are then counted. And then they do a 1% random hand count, because that's best practices. Not all states do that. Doesn't matter. Even if someone's won by 98% of the vote, across the state, they have to do a 1% random hand count just to make sure there are no glitches. And we wait for the results. And it's usually down to the deadline, because, there are a lot of ballots, and people, as long as your ballot is postmarked on election day, it gets to, by a certain point, they have to be counted. And we have a lot on the ballots. Californians vote on everything. And so people, the news people complain, well, why can't we have it, by 2 a.m. the next morning? Well, too bad. The point is they've got to be counted correctly, and, there it is. Live with it. So that's how we are today. And it's very good. I mean, let's face it. This is a voter-centric state. But the voter information and voter empowerment is something we all encounter. What we don't know necessarily is about election administration behind the scenes. We have a uniform election code and administrative practices set by the state Secretary of State. County and city ROVs and clerks do not make rules for when you can register, which is not necessarily true in other states. I sat with a group from the CODAs who told me that the registrar in one county would say, well, you can only register here, and then the next county they said, well, you can register in 2 places, and there's nothing you can do about it. Doesn't happen here in California. Uniform rules and administrative decisions. We don't make up what kind of ballots we use. The ballots have to be a ballot recommended by the FEC that has to be approved by the state. All these questions are settled because over the decades, both the secretaries of state and election officials have increasingly worked together. And what we've got to call a professional manner to make voting a seamless experience. So how do we get there? Early in the 1970s, beginning with Jerry Brown, when he became Secretary of State, he thought this is more than just a sleepy office, we can do something with this. He started to focus on election and voting practices. Better, how can we improve? And subsequent state secretaries of state, no matter their party or their personal political philosophy, ranging from extremely liberal to very, very conservative, they have left the party affiliation and their personal political philosophies at the front door of the state Secretary of State's office. And they have done an outstanding job of both engaging voters, developing new programs to help more people to learn how to vote, and to standardize election practices and administration. And I have to emphasize that again. It is not a partisan issue in this state. And it hasn't been for some time. And we have to acknowledge that. It's really important. We know that's not true in other states. However, there are some states that are working on. Two really important states are Colorado and Washington State. They're doing pioneering election reform. They share their resources and their practices with California. They're doing an amazing job. And their two elected secretaries of state are Republicans. I heard the Republican Secretary of State of Washington speaking to a league convention one time, and she said, my job is to make sure that every eligible voter can vote easily and with no hassles at all. So you see, it does not have to be partisan. You can certainly make it partisan, but it doesn't have to be. And we have to acknowledge that the legislature and governor, over the course of the years, have either supported continuing reforms or they didn't get in the way. They fight over a good many things. But good election procedures and empowering voters is not a pastime. That's what they're fine with that. They don't spend a lot of their time thinking up ways to prevent Californians from voting. That's really, really, I think, something we can all be proud of. And it just shows how, however bitter the partisan divide is and can be, it doesn't have to impact voting. So are we all okay now here in California? We have nothing more to worry about? No. We all know what happened in Shasta County. The Shasta League called for help. The Registrar of Voters called for help. The Secretary of State called for help. The League was very much involved there. Our state lobbyist went up and was one of the appointed election observers to make sure it all went well. We have threats, physical threats, to election workers here in California, and there are bills in the legislature to try and deal with that. Concerns about carrying guns into voting spaces. In a number of states, that's perfectly acceptable. People walk in with open carry. In Texas, you can't walk in with a gun if the polling place is in a courthouse or a school. Other than that, you can have your open carry. And league members in Pennsylvania have said for decades talk about being poll workers and having somebody come in carrying a semi-automatic and stand there waiting in line patting their gun. And there you are. Think how you would feel. I mean, they deal with it, but that's what we want happening in California. But we have a huge task ahead of us this fall, right here in the state, in our counties. We need to support election officials. I always joke with the Ventura County League. They have a habit on election day, after it closes, they send lovely baskets of goodies to the Registrar of Voters' office to help thank the people who are counting the ballots and everything. You could get arrested for that in Georgia. I mean, they're fighting laws that said now that you can't, if you're standing in a long line waiting to vote, you can't hand somebody a bottle of water. I always tell Ventura, be careful, you might do that. We need to fight misinformation and disinformation. I don't know where the line between mis and dis is. You take your pick, but I encountered one little piece of misinformation. Somebody said, well, you put your ballot in Los Angeles County, you put your ballot in the secure drop box, but they just throw it in the mail anyway. And I said, well, that's not true. The Registrar of Voters sends every 2 days, 2 people go out in a team, and they collect from the drop boxes, and then they take it to the secured site. Oh, well, I don't think so. I said, you can go call the registrar office yourself. That's the way it is. Well, that's not what I heard. Well, I didn't know what you heard, but now you know. So I'm sure you wouldn't repeat that to anybody else. But you're going to get misinformation and you're going to get disinformation, and we have to be focused on that. We have to just be aware of all the bad information that's, for whatever motivation is. And the League of Women Voters of the United States has Monday evening what they call rumor meeting. People can get on from all over the country and find out about what rumors are going around about elections in their areas. They exchange information. If anybody's interested, I can send the link. But, it's just a way to know what is going on out there, what you might want to do. We need to work on Get Out the Vote with our partners. California has a very long ballot. And we need to encourage people to get out there and vote the whole ballot. It just drops off after they get most of the way through the propositions at the state level, and then if they're local, it just drops off. That's really important. We need to make this election, again, a model for the nation. And the League is in a particularly good spot, one way or another, in order to make that happen. And now I would like to write one prop here. You see this card? We all know this card. We know and love this card. We have been registering on cards for decades. The information on it changes as the law changed, but this is a perfect example of form-following function. It works. Now, you can register online now. You can register via the DMV, finally, after decades of bitter fighting by the League and its partners to get the DMV to have a reliable way to register to vote through their portal. But it does work, because I renewed my license and I could see that it was working. But again, how many times have you been tabling over the course of the decades? And, I'm very fond of this. It's just wonderful, like the book and the pencil and table that you have a flat space and legs, and we've had them for hundreds of thousands of years. This piece of paper has just worked, and we all need to acknowledge that it is a really wonderful way to go. Now, they said questions, so if you've got questions, now's the time. Yeah.
I wanted people to know that I'm a person who receives SNAP and Medi-Cal, and every time we have a renewal of these programs, we get a voter registration form. It is in your packet. So they ask us if we want to register to vote. Have we registered? And it's so exciting to see how we're partnering with the Department of Social Services. Thank you.
And of course, you pre-register. Everybody goes into the high schools and pre-registers people who will be 18. You can see how far California has come. Yes, somebody, yeah.
I'm concerned about the American Independent Party, which is registered. A lot of people register for that, thinking that means that they are independent. And it's a very racist party.
I know.
And people don't understand that.
But everybody, a party gets to say what their name will be. And yeah, that's been a problem for decades.
Does the League work on informing people about the American?
Well, we do have our Easy Voter Guide, which tells people, this is what the Democratic Party says, Republican Party, Green Party, Libertarian, and explain what it is. And then no party preference, which is what most people think they're getting when they choose American Independent. But the election, we can't go in and tell a party, you have to change your name. We just can't do that.
Are we working to make voting day a holiday?
Not here in California that I know of, because now you can vote any day with a mail-in or a drop-in, and you can choose to go to vote centers where there are vote centers, and that's rolling out. So that, the question is, we aren't working on it because here in California, you have various options for how you vote and when you vote. So, I suppose you could make it a holiday, but in a sense, we kind of helped to make that not so much of a problem. Yes?
Why in the U.S., in California, is it not a requirement that you must vote?
Oh, you mean like Australia? I'm going to tell you right now that is never going to happen. If people got upset because they were supposed to wear masks, can you imagine if we tried to pass a law that says you have to vote, and if you don't vote, you have a really large fine? Because you do. You get fined if you don't vote in Australia. That's for better or for worse, that's not us. We will abolish the Electoral College, which we're working on, before we would get that. Yeah. Okay.
There's a campaign. I do not know if it's statewide, but it is in Santa Barbara County. The Board of Supervisors, there is a group of people that go to every board meeting, and they talk about voting on just one day, and not having the vote by mail ballot because of all the fraud and so forth. What do you think of that?
Well, I think it doesn't surprise me. And I think that that's where we have to, it's a law. It's a state law now. And the Board of Supervisors can't do that. But we do have an obligation to keep talking about how we want to empower people, and therefore that's the way it is. I don't know, I guess it would be up to the leagues here to decide if they wanted to go and argue with them. I don't know, but they're... Okay, one more thing, and then Virginia's hopping up and down. Yeah.
So I'm just curious if within my lifetime, which is not too long, I guess, we will ever abolish the Electoral College.
I expect that perhaps my younger granddaughter, who's 8, may possibly live to see it. But, in 18, at the Seneca Falls Convention, when they started talking about women voting, and Lucretia Mott, when they were talking about women's rights, said, "Oh no, that's going too far." And Frederick Douglass jumped up and said, "If you won't do that, then I don't vote either, because everybody has to vote." That took that long to get the women's right to vote. The League of Women Voters is working on statehood for D.C. They want to call it the Republic of the Commonwealth of Douglas. We've been working on that longer than it took to get women the right to vote. We're not giving up. They just keep coming back.
And what is the league's position on it?
50 years ago, we said we wanted to abolish it. And now we finally got around to do something about it. It's not like we had nothing better to do with our time in the meantime, but we feel now is the time, and it's a graduated campaign, and there's stuff on the league website. We don't have to do much here in California because we already endorse the National Popular Vote Compact, but there is material like if you just want to have speakers to go out and talk about what's wrong with the Electoral College and why it should be abolished, there's material there. Again, if the league has nothing better to do with its time. But it's there. Okay, so Virginia is hopping up and down.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. We're so honored to have you here. Thank you very much. Chris and Tom will be around later if you have more questions. I just want to remind everyone we have on the website, we have a Joe Holland, who's our county registrar. We have it was a talk he gave on the safety of your vote. So it goes through all the process to keep our vote accurate and safe in our county. But there's still more work to do. We need more voting sites in North Santa Barbara County. We have the population here. We have fewer sites here. So if you know people that have influence at a school site or something that's very convenient that could be used, we need more sites. And we have partners that are working with us on this. We also need, and San Luis League, I think, has cracked this one. I think, Ann and Elizabeth, I think your league has been able to cut some of those polling place working days and allow them to be shared. Do you have that happen any longer? Are there still 12-hour shifts at working a polling place? Could you comment to that a little bit? Do you don't work the polling places anymore? You adopt a poll. Okay, we can talk to you about that afterward, because I can tell you from my personal experience, it is a grueling day to spend 12 hours at working a polling station. So I understand completely why they cannot get enough volunteers for that. There should be a way to split that into a workable amount of time. Janet?
I think also, as members need to visit polling places to make sure that there isn't inappropriate
Yes.
material on the board
As observers.
and cover up a board at polling places clogged because there was so much anti-Muslim propaganda.
Well, we will have opportunities to also monitor polling places. So that just know that, and it will be coming right up. Okay, without further ado, Lisa Thornhill, I think you are going to introduce a very special new award that we're doing locally. And what better person than our former president, Lisa Thornhill, to introduce this.
Thank you, Virginia. Well, it's already been a fantastic meeting, and it's wonderful to see everybody. We've done a lot of amazing activity this past year, and one of them is we decided we would like to honor someone in our community with an annual award. And I think we have a cool picture to put up. Okay. So those who don't know, we've had our league in action since the late 1960s. And back in the day, before it started, it was going to take 90 members to become a formal organized league back in the late 1960s. And it really took people who had a vision and had a passion for voting and ensuring that everyone votes and is informed. So we have decided to provide this award to someone each year that has a vision for our community. And the vision for these women included informed voting, rights to vote, register voters, and ballot measures. On the left, we have Barbara Karamitzos, who came to our community in the mid-60s, and she started as a nurse, my profession as well. And she's been a longtime member of our community. She met her husband while working, Dr. John Karamitzos. They had 5 kids that grew up in our community. And all of them continue to be active and involved with community action. And we have Margaret Cooper, who's here today. Margaret has also been a longtime member in our community, and she has a fascinating background with the Japanese internment camps and what that meant to her and her family, the repercussions in our community, and what it also helped change in our community. And we thank you so much for that, Margaret. We have Louise Hammond. Louise has been here since mid-1960s. We met her and her family in San Luis Obispo, 1963-64. They could not find housing in San Luis Obispo because they were black. They had to live in Morro Bay and commute to San Luis Obispo. They moved here to Santa Maria, late 60s. We still had groups and organizations who were not open up to people of color at the time. And over the 50 years, these women have been a part of our program. They have seen great changes, as well as we have, in how we have now integrated, and our DEI activities are top on our list even today. And then last but not least, we have Nancy K. Johnson. She was my first mentor into the League. As a kid, that's all we heard around the house was what was going on and who was coming and going and what the action of the day was and where you needed to be and how to get there. And Chris very well planned out and showed us the changes that were made by having these women with a vision start in our community. The League has grown and changed and gone with the times. And today we have wonderful leadership through Virginia and Pam and Judy and Joyce Ellen and Sarah and all the folks that step up, Allison, to keep us going because, like Chris said, we're not done. And so for our award, we are incorporating the Making Democracy Work Founders Award. And this goes to somebody in the community who also embraces what our former League members have done and what we continue to do. And so now we will have the introduction of our very first awardee.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Yes. It's my pleasure to introduce my new friend, and that's Rosa Coronado. I don't have her bio right here in front of me, but I do know it. I know it because I've read it, and she's talked to me about it. She came over the border illegally with her mother, and she's one of 8 siblings. And my friend Rosa had a polio affliction as a youth, and so when the family came over, she couldn't work, but she could stay home and take care of some of the family, which she did. And then in President Reagan's administration, there was a program called Amnesty, which had a path to citizenship. And Rosa took that path, and she became a citizen. She achieved her associate degree at a community college. And we found ourselves so lucky to have her right here in our community. Rosa was a bit hesitant at first when she was asked by UDW, a local union group, to teach citizenship classes. She said, well, I'm not really trained to be. And she was humble and so modest, and it's just so inspiring to me to hear her story. She wouldn't do it, she wasn't confident, and finally they couldn't find anyone else, and they persuaded her, please try it. Well, she did. And the rest is history. She had been doing that since 2013. Many times when the grant ran out, she did it just as a volunteer through her church. She has a 100% passing rate, and some of her students are here today. They're all important to her, but of course, you know how that goes. Some of them are even more special than others. And so she's going to tell you more about that part of her story, but it's just such an honor to have our first recipient of this award be Rosa Coronado, nominated by Patricia Solorio, who could not be with us today.
Is it okay for you to hold this?
My words went out. I'm so proud to be here this morning. And like Virginia was saying, I had two of my students here. One of my first students was this Alvaro. And that was one of my first students, and this is one of my previous students right now. She's taking a class. And so I'm so proud of them that they're persistent taking the class. And yeah, like Virginia was mentioning, I started with in 2013, and I only had like 6 students back then. And I was okay, well, that was it, I'm done. They passed and everything. I said, I'm done. So I was like, this is it. I'm not going to teach you anymore. I was so nervous because I didn't know what to do. First of all, I'm not a teacher. And so I was like, but I'm a person that I cannot say no. So that's my weak part right there. I cannot say no, and I like to challenge myself to learn and to be, do what I want to do. So I said, okay, well, that 6 people passed already, so I'm done. Well, guess what? The word ran. People started hearing about the class, the dynamic of the class and everything. And when I was teaching at that place, it was like doors, different areas, right? So I started seeing people coming up from the doors. So sooner or later, I had 25 new students. So I was, oh my God, I didn't know what to say. I was going to run away because I don't know what am I going to do. But, eventually everything started coming into place, and I started learning more. I went into the computer, and I logged into the immigration link, and I started getting all the material that I needed. So it's been amazing to be part of the people's life and how they changed to become a citizen. One of the things that I always ask, why do you want to be a citizen? And the most of them, they answer, because I want to be able to vote. So that's what inspired me to continue doing it, because I know how important it is to vote. If you don't vote and you complain, you don't have no right to complain, right? So if you vote, if something is coming wrong, you got the right to say something. So this has been an amazing journey in my life, and I have my 3 daughters, but one missing one. But I had two of my daughters and my 4 grandboys right there. So, something so special. When I started, my 3rd grandson was born at that time. So I was so excited. That's a very memorable for me. And but yeah, I'm here to help the community. I love to help people, and I help them with all the process, not only to the class, but I help them with prepare the N400 form and some other questions they have or something they need, I try to help them as much as I can. So I'm a helper, and so it's an honor to be here, and thank you for being here too, my friends also.
Wow, I am so inspired by you, Rosa. Thank you. Thank you. And on behalf of the league, we have this beautiful, beautiful crystal bowl here that we'll show here with some nice lime and lemons in it. And it says, League of Women Voters of North Santa Barbara County, Founders Award 2024, Rosa Coronado, in appreciation for 10 plus years of teaching citizenship classes. And I apologize, I should have read it earlier, but I apologize. So we're presenting this to you here, and let's give you this right here, the flowers, and we also have a certificate, League of Women Voters of North Santa Barbara County, formerly League of Women Voters of Santa Maria Valley. This certifies that Rosa Coronado is an honorary member of League of Women Voters of North Santa Barbara County as of June 8, 2024. Virginia P. Souza, President, Sandra Boyd, Secretary.
And we have another bouquet of flowers. Roses for Rosa.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very inspiring. Thank you.
Oh, it's not done.
No, but wait.
But wait, there's more. Rosa, my name's Carson. I'm from the Office of State Senator Monique Limon, and it is my pleasure to present to you a cert from the state of California, as well from the State Senate of California, as well as one from the California State Assembly. Greg Hart's the assembly member for this area. His staffer could not be here today, but I wanted to give these to you and say thank you so much for all the work you've done. You've really changed a lot of lives in what you've been doing, and also it wasn't mentioned, but I know you've also been a great CASA volunteer over the last couple of years as well, and so all of that work is so important, especially in a community like Santa Maria. So thank you so much for everything you've done. Thank you. And there's more. So
thank you so much. Buenos días, ¿cómo están? Mi nombre es Yesenia Echevarría. Estoy aquí de parte de la oficina de Congresista Salud Carvajal. Good morning. My name is Yesenia Echevarría. I'm here on behalf of Congressman Salud Carvajal's office. So Congressman Carvajal could not make it today, but he definitely sends you his remarks. He too, as an immigrant, knows the value of being completely part of this great country as being a U.S. citizen. So we want to go ahead and acknowledge that as well. So we are recognizing Rosa with a certificate of special congressional recognition. So I will read this. Presented to Rosa Coronado in recognition of your outstanding and passionate commitment to serving the community while embodying the values of leadership, service to others, and being an inspiration to us all. So I also want to take the moment to honor you in the sense that, especially from a heritage of being Mexican, I know the values of what it is to be a U.S. citizen. My family, too, was able to make an opportunity thanks to Ronald Reagan's amnesty, which we're so overdue on. And Congressman Carvajal's working so hard to reach across the aisle and make that dream possible for others as well. But you embody so much, and I know that not only are you helping people realize their American dream, but you're truly paying it forward as an immigrant, which makes this country so great. So thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. I feel so honored, and it's my pleasure to be part of the community, helping as much people as I can to become a citizen and reinforce the voting place.
Yay. Woo. Very good. Okay. Wow. It's a wonderful time for us to take a little break, a coffee break and a bathroom break, and come back. We're going to write on the little index cards that we have at our tables. Each person has an index card at their table. You can write your name and where you live and what would you like to work on this coming year before we reconvene. What's going to be your passion this coming year? We're going to reconvene at 15 after.